I just want to create this image, maybe this iconic image of like, of this history, or like our attempt to like, to cultivate this historical narrative. I think if I can create an image that can represent that movement or that time, that would be like the best thing I could do. But yeah, we'll see. You know, whether there's the will of the population is one thing, but I think we do have to fight for these buildings to be preserved, because the community will come around, and I think if we lose these structures, we'll regret it in the end. Yeah, I could talk forever about it. So growing up, visiting my grandparents in Lexington, Kentucky, there would be these books on the coffee table, the Prophet, Kahlil Gibran's The Prophet, and some other books from that background, and I was told, you know, this is your heritage, you know, don't you know anything about it? This is a great writer, and we have this relative who was a poet, and his works are even taught at the American University in Beirut. And so like he's, you know, this really well-known guy, Amin Rouhani, and I never really looked him up. These sort of important books or texts that your family, you know, throws into your lap, you don't necessarily value until later on, or until too late. The Book of Khalid was the first Arab American novel, as they say. It was the first novel written by, in the Western vein, written by an Arabic person in English. He's writing at the time and living in the old Arabic Quarter. When Little Syria, when the Arabic Quarter was at its height, was this very diverse community full of people from the Middle East, or the Levant, full of people from Eastern Europe, and some Irish people, and people from all over the place. And so it's really like this book, though it doesn't take on the problem of describing to a T the community, it still is a kind of skeleton key for the mindset that was maybe what these new immigrants, this great wave of greater Syrian immigrants were bringing into the situation in New York with them in the early 20th century, in that first decade of the 20th century. I keep expecting to finish, but it's with Little Syria or with that history, but it doesn't seem to be happening right now. Everything, no matter how distant from that conversation, tends to fold back in, intentionally or not, into the themes, at least of Rouhani's novel, into that greater tempo of the New York City history. There's a lot of people from around the city who have mobilized around this issue. I mean, it's a funny thing. Like, I love the Rouhani story, because he, at his time in like 1910, is seeing, you know, a different kind of New York, a very like magical like place of golden domes, and he's like thinking to the future, to this like future utopia, like what New York will become. He's thinking of these like sort of towering like mystical structures and whatnot, and strangely, like the neighborhood is transformed in a way which feels kind of, you know, ironically in keeping with his kind of mystical visions of that period. From the 1880s into the 1940s, at that time, there was this large act of eminent domain. The project to build the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, the building of the on-ramp to that tunnel, necessitated the mass eviction of the Little Syrian community, the lower half of Little Syria. So in the 40s, early 40s, that community was evicted. And then later on in the 60s, when the World Trade Center development was being planned out, the rest, the sort of northern half of the Little Syrian community, was once again displaced through an act of eminent domain for this construction. So now what we have left are 3 buildings that were contemporaneous with that Little Syria period. So here before me you see the 3 structures remaining of the former Little Syria neighborhood. One is St. George's Melkite Church, one is a community house that later became a Buddhist community center. You can see the little Buddhas on the pediments above the windows. And the third is your typical tenement housing building from that era. And we have this little island here next to the tallest Holiday Inn on the planet, I think, on the one side, and then this sort of wasteland of construction and development of the 9/11 Museum and the memorial and all these who knows what. In this technological age, what are we selling? We're selling images, we're selling icons, we're selling time in the viewer's, optical space, and so that's the good of sale that I'm here offering. So if I can create an iconic image of Little Syria that can capture a few people's imagination, this makes good on the lost piece of my family's inheritance represented in that lost story, that long out of print book of Little Syria, of Book of Khalid. So I think that would be the best way that I can serve my grandfather. That part of the community. O success, our lords of power today are thy slaves. Thy helots are kings of wealth. Everyone grinds for thee, everyone for thee lives and dies. Thy palaces of silver and gold are reared on the souls of men. Thy throne is mortised with their bones, cemented with their blood. Thou ravenous Gorgon, on what bankruptcies thou art fed, on what failures, on what sorrows. The railroads sweeping across the continents and the steamers plowing through the seas are laden with sacrifices to thee. Aye, and the millions of innocent children are torn from their homes and from their schools to be offered to thee at the sacrificial stone of the factories and mills. The cultured too and the wise are counted among thy slaves. Even the righteous surrender themselves to thee and are willing to undergo that hideous transformation. O success, what an infernal litany thy votaries and high priests are chanting to thee. Thou ruthless Gorgon, what crimes thou art committing, and what crimes are being committed in thy name.